with this project within 10 minutes, but we'll love to connect with you and hear about your feedback. So this is a QR code to our website, and our dashboard is already live, and our prototype is for public viewing as well. In the literature and from the World Meteorological Organization data, we know that 82% of Asian countries do provide climate data. But there's more to the stories that you can see from the slides here, down to a tailored product, for example, how Puskesmas or healthcare facility can use climate data is really up to the local healthcare workers to interpret. We assume that when we know climate data, we'll know what to do and how do we react and adapt. In another hand, we also have information system for health. So we have information for climate and we have information for health. For here, you can see we have the real time of storm tracking, air quality monitoring. We have flash flood early warning system, and also just recently published from the PMPG from the Indonesian Meteorological Bureau. We have the extreme weather events alerts, for example, for early warning system. So for health, in another hand, we have different diseases for different health system, information system for reporting and monitoring. For here, you can see for dengue, for mental health, for cardiovascular diseases, and as well as other diseases. Most of the time, we can see a lot of the system and reporting apps are very different and isolated or in siloed in different diseases. It caused a lot of challenges in integrating it is to understand what is the burden of the disease or the risk of our community. So our project was tried and attempt to build a model that we could have data from climate and health talk together and help with the program planning and adaptation in decision-making process. So for us, from the literature, we would like to emphasize 2 points. First is really the gender specific impacts that we know from the past and from the literature. Climate change affects women or different gender groups uniquely, and it's very disproportionate, from maternal health to food security, from water access to economic opportunity. So all these impacts are different. It's very gender specific. And the second one, we also know that women lead community initiatives. We can see significant higher success rates, higher buy-in, and higher community engagement. So how can we utilize these to what we have known into the local community that we could build a very effective climate change adaptation, especially in healthcare sector? So this project have selected 3 sites. So from the far east to the far west, from Aceh to Mataram and Ambon, very distinct or similar coastal risks that they face, as well as some historical incidents like tsunami in Aceh, which is 20 years ago, as well as some tribes or conflicts that is happening in that area. So there's a lot of complex social vulnerability, as well as the coastals and climate availability that is happening. Let me walk you through our methodology. So a lot of the focus group discussions are happening with different stakeholders, not just the Puskesmas level, as well as the Dinas up to the Ministry of Health. We are trying to tackling the issues like standardizations of data, how different data could possibly or have the potential to talk to each other and also create link and have further analysis. We also see accessibility challenging, which there is a lot of inconsistency standards across platforms, like what we would just saw, and also creating barriers for effective decision making. In the data interpretations challenge, we also observe really needing a contextual analysis framework so that the nuances and variations in the local scenario could be more relevant for the stakeholders to use, and also have the motivations to feedback on the data that they use. So our research really show a variety levels of data accessibility, not only from the climate bill as well as the health field, and also some crucial information behind all these paywalls and special permissions. So we do need to navigate ourselves into very different big mix of different stakeholders. But the focus group or the people that involve have really telling us the pressing need for better transparency and also cross-sector collaborations. They see the benefit of having this putting together and giving us a more collated and also integrated data. We have also gathered some very fascinating regional insights with 3 different sites in 2 different local regions. Banda Aceh really shines in the community-driven approach, and also Mataram has their institutional responses, as well as Ambon, so it has a very data localization effort. So 3 very different strands that can also learn and also upskill. So the 3 different sites really give us a lot of different insights. This is what we saw in Puskesmas, and you can see a lot of the infectious disease. Some places are still using WhatsApp for reporting. So for example, there's 1 or 2 cases of dengue fever. There will be a coding that a reporter from the Puskesmas will be reporting through WhatsApp. And after a few days, they will get another notification saying that this already been updated in the database. So then these cases will also be bring into the map, the very physical map that you saw in this picture. Then they will have stakeholders from the local community. For example, they will bring in for police or community leaders or NGOs to be in front of this physical map to really pinpoint what are the cases and what kind of priority actions that we need to do now. So this is very, very real world practical examples that we see at the moment right now. But of course, there will be a lot of challenges, like when we supposed to report cases, then there will be some time to go through all these different levels of reporting. Then when we are waiting for next instructions for actions, it will be a little bit or a lot of delays. So our dashboard are trying to address this issue as well. So how do we make that the data is more near to real time? It's relevant to the context, and it's necessary to make decisions and help the stakeholders to visualize and have more easier understanding to what is happening. This is just an example that I took from Ambon. So it's just the same Puskesmas area that you saw in the picture. There you can see from the rate or the different colors where are the most at-risk populations when there is floods, or who are the people that is where the community that have more people living with disability or age above 60s. So different vulnerable populations. So here are some other features that we try to incorporate based on the feedback from the first frontline Puskesmas healthcare workers. The video is just showing there's one feature on the community perceptions. We have interactive distributions maps based on the climate data and also the disaster data. So we have the hazard vulnerability calculator, we have the trend analysis, and also some comparative analysis aggregated to provincial and also the local level. So here is just a demonstration that one features that the Puskesmas people really, really think it's very useful for them for planning and also decision making. They wanted to know that what the people in our community have already been doing for the adaptations. For example, during floods, what are they doing? What will be useful for them? Where do they get informations? From their feedback, they would like this feature to be continuously monitoring so that when there's any interventions or adaptations planned, they could also monitor if it's working or not, or where can we be improved. So another point that I just wanted to make is really the women leadership from the project that we have we are implementing. So take Cecilis or MPH, or Master of Public Health students, who discovered how women healthcare cadres, so these community health volunteers, are really strengthening a system through their very unique combination of local knowledge and community engagement. And also with very this is very great examples. Dr. Yulia very innovative head Puskesmas in Mataram. So after participating in our project, she really transform and also make changes in their facility, making a lot of person-centered design changes from accessible receptions desks to very strategically relocate clinics. So she also helped us understand how our dashboard can serve as a very powerful advocacy tool. So it's not just top-down policy, that they could also use some of the data from the local challenges to present the attention and get attention from the decision maker at the national level. We are also very fortunate to work with community leaders like Mindy from Lombok Care, whose insight really help us understand dashboard truly reflect the community needs, especially children with special needs. So I think this will be my last slide, and I would very proud to say that the researcher and members from this project really go above and beyond. They also take opportunity to engage with the next generations of students and also children, that when they face a climate change impact, like what can they do? Like what are the agents and resources they could also be involved? So just two main big points I would like to share today. First, I guess climate change impact on women are really unique, and we don't need to have more evidence on that, but the evidence need to be translated and to be actionable for people to making in charge or decision making in policy and health services. So second, also when women leads climate initiatives, the communities really thrives. So success really hinges on this very seamless collaborations between communities, government, and also NGOs. And really we together, and all these combinations are needed. For me, I really appreciate this platform to highlight some of the good practices, some community projects that already showing remarkable results. And I guess this is really one way that we could highlight some of the effective climate change adaptations. And of course, our future really lies in strong partnership across all sectors. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Connie. Thank you so much for, as always, your great presentations. I think that is so clear. So for the audience, so if you have any questions, if you have any comments, so please stay tuned. So we're going to have question and answer after all speakers do their presentation. So I would like to invite our second speaker. So the second speaker will be Dr. Clara Siagian, Mbak Clara. So previously, Mbak Connie is talking from Aceh, Maluku, and West Nusa Tenggara, and Mbak Clara in her presentation, which is about building inclusive climate resilience, enhancing the adaptive capacity of Indonesian children and youth in overcoming and mitigating the climate impact. So the research location was in Jakarta, Central Java, and West Kalimantan. So thank you so much, Mbak Clara, for coming to this symposium. And I would like to read her short bio. Mbak Clara is a senior researcher at Center on Child Protection and Wellbeing, or PUSKAPA, University of Indonesia, with a decade worth of experience in designing and conducting social research on topics such as childhood policy, poverty, civil registrations, urban youth children, evictions, and housing in both countries, Indonesia and Australia. So she obtained doctoral degree from Prof School of Public Policy, Australian National University, Master of Public Policy from the same university, ANU, and also Bachelor of Arts in International Relation from UGM, University of Gadjah Mada, Indonesia. So without further ado, I would like to hand over the microphone to Mbak Clara. Please go ahead, Mbak Clara.
Hi all, just checking if my voice and my images are working well.
Yes, I can hear you very
Okay,
well.
all right. So I'll be taking the liberty to speak in Bahasa Indonesia because I can see that most of the attendees, my assumptions are Indonesian. So let me speak in Bahasa Indonesia.
Yes.
Um,
Have you shared your screen, Mbak?
oh yeah, I'll do that now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can you see my screen now? Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, your screen.
Alright. Jadi sebelum saya mulai mempresentasikan ini, saya ingin juga memberikan pengakuan saya kepada orang-orang First Nation, orang-orang lokal di tempat di mana saya tinggal sekarang di Sydney, yang disebut sebagai bangsa Eura di Tanah Gadigal. Saya juga ingin memberikan rasa hormat saya kepada leluhur mereka yang telah memberikan tempat buat banyak orang di sini dan telah merawat tanah ini sehingga tanah ini kemudian bisa menjadi rumah buat banyak orang. Di sini saya juga tidak sendiri, ada beberapa peneliti dari PUSKAPA yang hadir sebagai peserta, terutama ada Widisari sebagai koordinator penelitian, kepala koordinator penelitian dari PUSKAPA. Nanti Widi juga mungkin bisa membantu saya untuk menjawab pertanyaan-pertanyaan yang ditujukan ke presentasi ini. Baik, presentasi saya berjudul Menuju Tata Kelola Iklim yang Berkeadilan bagi Anak dan Kaum Muda Marginal. Ini adalah penelitian yang didukung oleh KONEKSI juga, dan kami bermitra, PUSKAPA bermitra dengan Indonesian Project di Australian-Indonesian University dengan Associate Professor Firman Witular. Sebentar saya buat alarm dulu, takutnya kelamaan. Baik, mari kita mulai dari apa sih yang mendasari penelitian ini. Jadi, saya asumsikan kita semua sudah setuju bahwa ada perubahan iklim, ada krisis iklim yang mengancam kehidupan manusia di dunia. Dan menurut para ahli dan para praktisioner, anak dan kaum muda adalah kelompok yang termasuk kelompok yang paling rentan, bukan saja karena mereka tidak mempunyai kemampuan seperti orang dewasa untuk menghadapi dampak-dampak perubahan iklim, tapi mereka juga akan menghadapi dampak-dampak perubahan iklim tidak hanya sekarang, tapi juga nanti ketika mereka dewasa. Tetapi mereka tidak punya kuasa untuk menentukan bagaimana kita menghadapi dan mempersiapkan perubahan iklim nanti, karena mereka tidak punya kekuatan politik. Jadi, sudahlah mereka paling sedikit berkontribusi karena mereka masih anak-anak dan kaum muda, mereka paling rentan terhadap dampaknya. Sebagian dari mereka juga adalah kelompok yang paling miskin dan paling tidak mempunyai kapasitas untuk melindungi diri. Nah, pertanyaan utama penelitian kami, kalau begitu, dari sudut pandang dan pengalaman anak dan kaum muda marginal itu sendiri, bagaimana mereka memahami perubahan atau ketidakadilan iklim. Jadi, kita sudah tahu mereka mengalami ketidakadilan iklim, tapi dari persepsi mereka sendiri bagaimana nih, gitu. Kami kemudian mendatangi komunitas-komunitas di komunitas-komunitas informal dan dengan sosial ekonomi yang rendah di beberapa kota di Indonesia yang dari datanya mengalami dampak perubahan iklim yang cukup masif. Misalnya kami ada 3 lokasi. Di Jakarta, kami di Jakarta Utara. Karena menurut data di kecamatan itu perubahan suhu panas itu paling besar. Kemudian di Pontianak kami mendatangi satu komunitas lagi karena di lokasi itu tidak hanya soal asap, tentunya yang menjadi permasalahan di situ, tapi juga banjir. Banjir yang nanti akan saya ceritakan banjirnya sebenarnya bukan banjir bandang gitu, tapi banjirnya pelan-pelan merusak daya hidup mereka. Yang ketiga, kami ke Pekalongan, di kota Pekalongan yang mengalami banjir rob, berasal dari air laut, dan permukaan air laut yang meninggi dan permukaan air tanah yang turun. Lalu bagaimana kami mencoba menjawab pertanyaan ini di komunitas-komunitas tersebut? Pertama, tentunya kami melakukan studi pustaka. Apa intervensi yang lazim digunakan oleh negara belahan bumi dan bagaimana mereka menyikapi apa sih definisi perubahan ketidakadilan iklim bagi anak dan kaum muda marginal di negara-negara yang sepertinya mirip dengan Indonesia. Kedua, kami melakukan kualitatif partisipatif. Jadi dengan beragam teknik yang kreatif dan fleksibel, misalnya community tour atau berjalan-jalan sekitar pemukiman, mengambil foto, melihat memetakan daerah, kami berdiskusi dengan anak-anak dan kaum muda, serta juga melakukan wawancara dengan warga, orang tua, pemuka, komunitas, dan juga dengan pemerintah di tingkat nasional dan kota. Terakhir, kami melakukan analisis kuantitatif berdasarkan data statistik dan juga GIS mapping, pemetaan berbasis GIS. Yang kami ingin tahu apakah hal-hal yang kami temukan bersama anak-anak dan kaum muda itu tertangkap di data-data agregat dengan skala yang lebih luas yang sering dijadikan rujukan bagi pengambilan keputusan di Indonesia. Untuk presentasi kali ini saya akan fokus pada hasil dari temuan kualitatif partisipatif kami. Temuan pertama kami, anak-anak dan kaum muda itu sebenarnya sangat peka. Mereka punya kemampuan alamiah untuk mengenali perubahan lingkungan serta wujud dari krisis iklim di sekitarnya. Mereka bisa mengidentifikasikannya dan mereka bisa nih memberitahukan kita, menyampaikan dampaknya apa, penyebabnya apa, bagaimana mereka dan orang tua mereka, keluarga mereka, komunitas mereka mencoba menghadapi itu semua. Nah, dampak-dampak yang mereka sebutkan di percakapan dengan kami itu rata-rata adalah dampak yang sangat sebenarnya bisa dianggap kecil, bisa dianggap biasa, bisa dianggap sesuatu yang lama-lama dinormalisasi. Jadi dia bukan sebuah bencana besar, tapi bayangkan misalnya genangan air yang hilang dalam 3-4 jam, yang cuma sampai sebatas lutut. Nah, tapi itu terjadi terus-menerus secara lahan-lahan dan sebenarnya itu menggerogoti kehidupan keseharian mereka. Dan mereka harus beradaptasi untuk tetap melanjutkan hidupnya. Nah, adaptasi ini tentu punya biaya. Nah, siapa yang menanggung biayanya? Itu biasanya anak-anak, kaum muda, dan juga perempuan. Kami kemudian menggunakan konsep slow violence atau kekerasan perlahan oleh Rob Nixon. Menurut Rob Nixon, kekerasan perlahan ini adalah kekerasan yang terjadi secara bertahap, tapi seringkali luput dari perhatian dengan dampak kerusakan yang baru kita sadari di kemudian hari, yang kemudian menggerogoti berbagai aspek kehidupan. Dan seringkali kita tidak menyadarinya sebagai kekerasan. Contoh-contoh kekerasan perlahan iklim yang dialami anak-anak di penelitian kami. Kabut asap, pelan-pelan merusak pernafasan mereka. Dan juga sering menginterupsi persekolahan. Jadi kadang sekolah harus diliburkan selama beberapa hari. Tentunya nggak membuat mereka drop out. Tapi tentu saja kualitas persekolahannya bagaimana? Kualitas pendidikannya. Kemudian banjir. Banjir seringkali kalau tidak sampai 60 cm dianggap sebagai genangan. Sehingga tidak ada bantuan dari pemerintah. Sekolah juga tidak diliburkan. Sehingga mereka harus melewati banjir, genangan tersebut, dan menyebabkan gangguan kulit, gangguan alergi, dan lain-lainnya. Dan tentu saja sanitasi dan akses air bersihnya juga sangat akan terganggu. Suhu panas yang merangkak perlahan ini yang dialami beberapa komunitas mengubah pola hidup mereka. Yang kami amati, anak-anak kemudian banyak sekali beraktivitas di malam hari hingga tengah malam. Padahal sekolahnya mulai jam 6 gitu. Jadi waktu mereka itu pola hidupnya sangat berubah dari pola hidup orang tuanya atau generasi sebelumnya. Dan tentu saja menyebabkan beragam gangguan kesehatan dan ketergantungan pada AC. Kalau bisa. kemudian juga merusak lahan pertanian, memusnahkan pohon, tempat bermain hingga tanaman endemik. Nah, mereka juga perlahan-lahan merasa asing di lingkungan sendiri karena berubah landscape-nya sampai mereka tidak bisa mengenali lagi. Selanjutnya, temuan kedua kami, anak-anak dan kaum muda mengalami beragam bentuk ketidakadilan iklim. Kami menggunakan ketidakadilan iklim menurut Newell, yaitu prosedural, distributif, rekognitif, dan antargenerasi. Sepertinya saya, karena waktunya kurang, jadi saya akan skip bagian ini karena ada hal yang menurut saya lebih menarik untuk didiskusikan. Tapi temuan ketiga kami mendapati bahwa anak-anak dan kaum muda tidak menarasikan pengalaman dan perjuangan mereka sebagai ketidakadilan. Jadi mereka seringkali merasa bahwa ini sudah alamiah atau sidik qadarullah, sudah kehendak Tuhan. Walaupun mereka tahu perubahan iklim, tapi mereka merasa perubahan iklim itu sesuatu yang ya sudah kehendak Tuhan yang harus kita terima gitu. Jadi mereka belum mengerti bahwa ada keputusan-keputusan yang diambil secara sengaja oleh orang-orang atau pihak-pihak yang mempunyai kuasa yang menghasilkan perubahan iklim tersebut. Nah, kami lalu meminjam konsep ketidakadilan epistemik dari Miranda Fricker, bahwa ketidakadilan yang dialami anak-anak dan kaum muda serta komunitas yang kami dampingi ini mengalami ketidakadilan epistemik ketika mereka tidak memiliki cara dan alat tafsir serta konsep-konsep yang memadai untuk memahami, memaknai, dan mengartikulasikan pengalamannya dalam konteks sosial politik yang tepat. Jadi mereka tidak punya cara framework, cara pandang untuk kemudian mendudukkan permasalahan mereka di situasi sosial politik yang ada.
Mbak Clara,
Lalu
1 menit lagi.
1 menit ya.
1 minute.
Nah, pertanyaan yang muncul, apa yang menyebabkan dan melanggengkan ketidakadilan epistemik ini? Pertama, kami merasa ada normalisasi ketimpangan dan kekerasan struktural, bahwa perubahan iklim dianggap cuma yang dianggap oleh pemerintah dan yang difokuskan pemerintah adalah perubahan iklim yang besar, yang jadi bencana besar. Tapi perubahan iklim yang dampak perubahan iklim yang timpang, yang perlahan ini dianggap sebagai buah dari proses alam yang tak terhindarkan. Karena itu tidak ada alasan kemudian bagi warga untuk menuntut solusi. Kemudian warga menyerap dan mengakomodasi dampak ini secara mandiri. Tentunya ada biaya sosialnya. Adaptasi yang dilakukan warga berskala individual, berjangka pendek, dan bisa berdampak buruk di masa depan. Yang kedua, pendekatan perubahan iklim yang memprioritaskan bencana alam. Jadi, kita belum ngomongin nih tentang slow onset climate change yang merasuki kehidupan, menggerogoti secara perlahan. Kemudian yang terakhir, warga marginal, terutama anak dan kaum muda, kurang atau bahkan tidak terlibat dalam pengambilan keputusan soal perubahan iklim. Sehingga mereka tidak bisa kasih tahu nih bahwa perubahan iklim itu mempengaruhi bagaimana kami memasak, mempengaruhi bagaimana perasaan kami, emosi kami, bagaimana kami berinteraksi, mempengaruhi kulit kami yang mungkin kami bisa beli salep dalam 2-3 hari selesai, tapi berulang-ulang terus gitu. Jadi karena mereka tidak dilibatkan, maka perjuangan-perjuangan keseharian mereka ini tidak jadi bahan untuk pengambilan keputusan. Mungkin nanti di diskusi kita bisa diskusikan atau ngobrol apa saja sih rekomendasi kami untuk kemudian mencoba mengubah ketidakadilan epistemik ini dalam perubahan iklim. Semoga ada yang nanya soal itu, jadi saya bisa lanjutkan presentasi saya. Terima kasih banyak.
Thank you, Mbak Clara. So I think
sebelum itu saya nanti di chat akan kasih link untuk video film yang kami lakukan bersama anak dan kaum muda, baik di bahasa Indonesia ataupun bahasa Inggris, serta tautan ke laporan utama dan infografiknya. Jadi saya izin dulu untuk
Oh yeah,
menyebutkan
thank
ke
you. I
teman-teman.
think that will be that will be very useful for us, for the audience as well, for them to understand more about your research. But later on in our Q&A sessions, I'll let all speakers to add some comments as well. So later on, you can also add some information as well in Q&A sessions. So, but thank you so much, Bu Clara, for your presentations. And also thank you for that very important research, and hopefully that will bring impact to the marginalized population in Indonesia. So next, I'm going to invite our next speaker. So, and we have Associate Professor Ibu Zulfa Sakhiyya, who is from Faculty of Languages and Arts, Universitas Negeri Semarang. Good afternoon, Ibu. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank
Makasih.
you. Terima kasih. So, Ibu Zulfa, Professor Zulfa will present their research, which entitled Gendering Climate Resilience, Why Women Matter in Climate Adaptation in Indonesia. So research location is in Central Sulawesi, East Nusa Tenggara, and also Jakarta. I would like to read her short bio. So Professor Zulfa obtained her Doctor of Philosophy from University of Auckland, New Zealand, from School of Critical Studies in Education. And she was also a Fulbright Visiting Fellow from Ohio State University, United States, Master of TESOL from La Trobe University, Australia, and also Bachelor of Arts from Universitas Negeri Semarang. So Professor Zulfa Sakhiyya, she is currently the director of the Literacy Research Center. This is very important research center, I believe. Universitas Negeri Semarang. She is also a senior research fellow from in Asia Research Center of the Universitas Indonesia. Sometimes I just got confused between whether I speak Indonesia or English. She is Director of Communication, the Indonesian Young Academy of Science, and founder of the Indonesian Literacy Educators Associations. Thank you so much, Ibu Zulfa, for for you accepting our invitation to speak in this symposium. So without further ado, so I would like to hand over to Ibu Zulfa. Ibu Zulfa, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Pak Febi. Allow me to share my screen. Is it visible and am I audible?
Yes, I can see your screen and I can hear as well. I just want to for those who need translational service, so you can check the message from the disrupting violence beacon. So that is how you access either Indonesian or English translations. Thank you, Ibu. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think because there is the Indonesian interpretation that is available online, I think I'll to make it easy, I'll speak in English, and then later in the question and answer session, I will mix the language as well. So thank you very much. It's been a real honor to be able to share our research on gender and climate change. It is a very respectable webinar, and being in conversation in this very important topic with colleagues from PUSKAPA, with Mbak Clara, as well as from Griffith University. So in this webinar, I'm going to share my research findings, like everyone else, that is funded by KONEKSI Research Fund, because our research highlighting the roles of women's climate advocacy group in inclusive climate resilience in Indonesia. And this is not, this is a collaborative research. It's not a lonely journey, sorry. Yeah. So it's a collaborative research project between our university, Universitas Negeri Semarang. So we are neighbor with Universitas Diponegoro in Central Java, and Australian National University, we've got Dr. Rini Astuti, and then Universitas Gadjah Mada with Dr. Yulida Pangastuti, and University of Western Australia with Professor Bill Dawson in climate change education. And in our research, we employ feminist participatory action research with women's grassroots climate advocacy organizations. And our partner organizations are Solidaritas Perempuan, or Women Solidarity, Kinasih, in Jakarta. And then we've got Masintowo Institute in Poso, Jaringan Perempuan Indonesia Timur, the Eastern Female Network in Kupang, as well as Re-Institute in Jogja. So I'd like to start maybe with this very concept that gender is a social construct that differentiates social roles and responsibilities between men and women. And gender inequality results in different access, participation, controls, benefits between men and women. And because of this social construct, it tends to place women in a more vulnerable position rather than men. And we highlight the position of women here, and we take deliberately the gender perspective because women make up the majority of the world's poor, including in Indonesia, who rely heavily on local natural resources for their daily lives and for their livelihoods. They have to provide food and water and household energy like firewood for their families. Within a climate crisis kind of condition, they have to work harder. They have to walk further to get some water, for example, and spend more time to ensure that their families have food and resources on the table. So to make the long story short, issues pertaining to the environment are inherently political. Like what Clara has also mentioned, and decisions about the environment are not politically neutral. So that's why we, in this research, we take feminist political ecology for our theoretical framework. And the background of our study is that within climate crisis narratives, women are portrayed as vulnerable, and we agree with that. And this is our background because they are 14 times more likely to be injured and die due to natural disasters, and they are vulnerable to gendered kind of discrimination, such as sexual harassment, domestic violence, child marriage, human trafficking, and so on. And we agree that climate crisis doesn't affect everyone equally, that women and girls face disproportionate impacts from climate change. However, our concern is that this narrative turns the attention away from the real inequalities on the ground in terms of decision-making and access to resources, and the absence of institutional norms that need to improve access and protect those vulnerable. So the discourse of victimhood, as my background is a critical discourse analysis, cuts out the space for understanding women's agency, and thus discounting their daily innovations and strategies in daily climate resilience. So the discourse of victimhood overlooks that women play considerable roles in taking up grassroots initiatives in climate adaptations and as well as resilience. So our study would like to address this gap because there is a limited research and policy attention given to these grassroots networks, despite their extensive local knowledge and social connections in taking care of the nature. So in order to pursue the relationship between gender and climate adaptation, we conducted firstly policy reviews, and then we carried out survey to 200 climate advocacy network in Indonesia. And we also did a feminist participatory action research with 4 women's climate organizations in Kupang, Poso, and 2 organizations in Yogyakarta. We use feminist participatory action research because it engage participants in collaborative knowledge production and enabling our partners to critically analyze and reflect on their experiences, which will be able to mobilize collective action towards more equitable society. So first, we did this policy review. The Indonesian government has actually issued climate adaptation policies, and our study has found 54 climate change related policies issued by 4 institutions or ministries. This is with the previous kind of ministries, not the current administration, and they include the policies issued by the National Development Planning Agency atau Bappenas, Ministry of Environment and Forestry, KLHK, Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection, KPPA, the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries. So out of these 54 policies, only 7 documents that explicitly mention the word gender and or women in adaptation policies. However, we note that those policies only touch or only mention in passing the word gender without sufficiently addressed the required efforts for a more inclusive climate adaptation. And then that's the policy reviews. And then for our next stages is feminist participatory action research. We work collaboratively with 4 women's climate advocacy networks. And we use this FPAR because it highlights the experiences of women so that their contribution is acknowledged. And we as researchers position ourselves as equal to our partners and believe that their local knowledge should also be considered as knowledge, like in academic field. And our findings from the FPAR, our findings reveals that the women's climate advocacy groups in our study have contributed many vast arrays of adaptation strategies at the local level. And we would like to we need to reconceptualize or challenge the definition of adaptation itself, not as high-tech kind of adaptation as narrated by the academics in the global north, but a more localized and mundane kind of adaptation that contributes to local resilience at the community levels. And our findings reveal that the different groups from different localities are exposed to different kinds of climate vulnerability in a variety of forms and intensities. And therefore, the adaptation strategies that they employ is contextually dependent and different and diverse. And wherever they are located, in our findings, gender plays a significant role in serving as the cohesive foundation of these groups. So for instance, in East Nusa Tenggara, where the main livelihood of the female locals, the women are subsistence or fishing and farming, as well as weaving, menenun, they mainly rely on natural resources as well as natural dyes. The aggressive establishment of, for example, food estates as well as the geothermal power have magnified the already extreme ecological conditions in East Nusa Tenggara, which force women to change their basic livelihood. So the absence then of the local trees that provide natural dyeing for their weaving, then what they do after realizing after many discussions that it's due to the extreme and aggressive deforestation, and what they do at the local level is that they plant some local trees that provide the natural dyeing. They also, these women also work collaboratively to restore mangrove, and that's in Kupang, and then in Yogyakarta and Kupang as well. They have this women's capacity building or training for from woman to another woman, and at Poso, for example, because they have this Poso Lake, they establish this group called Perempuan Penjaga Danau Poso, because they want to preserve the local knowledge and tradition against the establishment of the geothermal power. And in Yogyakarta, we also notice and observe and note down that the karisma farmers, ibu-ibu petani karisma, the karisma female farmers, they use Pranoto Mongso as a local agricultural calendar. It's a traditional Japanese agricultural calendar that serves as a timekeeping system that gives them some kind of practical guide, informed by many generations of experience in taking care of the land, as well as taking care of their crops. And it will also serve as a source of optimal planting, harvesting, and preparing for seasonal challenges. And this is a very local knowledge that has been and tried to be restored by SP Karisma, SP Kinasi, as well as Petani Karisma, due to the Green Revolution during the New Order administration. Because of that, then this kind of local knowledge has been eroded and corroded. So, and another one is sustainable agriculture by using locally grown seeds and natural fertilizers against the dominant, top-down kind of policy of using chemical fertilizer and foreign seeds.
1 more minute.
So,
please.
yes, this is my last slide. So to make the long story short, 3 key messages, I think, to ensure climate resilience, as our findings suggest, and perhaps other similar studies also show, that we are tendering the suggestion to use a local and more gender responsive approach to adaptation rather than the high-tech kind of adaptation as proposed by the Northern academics, and provide equal access to social protection and climate adaptation programs, acknowledge that woman is also human being, not just man in as written in KK, Kartu Keluarga. And last but not least is we need to strengthen collaboration between the state and grassroots community schemes, bottom up, to build stronger mutual combination and more inclusive climate adaptation. Thank you very much. I look forward to discussing this issue with all of you. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Professor Zulfa, for the presentations. This is very impactful and very quality research. Thank you so much. And apologies, the time is just so limited, but later on, as I said earlier, so in our question and answer, so we will let each presenter to provide some closing statement or some additional information as well. So thank you again, Prof. Zulfa. And then we have our next speaker, Associate Professor Sonia Roitman. How are you, Sonia? Good afternoon.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, so thank you so much, Professor Sonia Roitman, for coming and for accepting our invitation to be one of the speakers. So Professor Sonia is Associate Professor from the School of the Environment Faculty of Science, the University of Queensland, and she will present her research, which entitled Resilience and Gender in Relation to Floods in Semarang. Please allow me to read her short bio so that we can know Dr. Sonia more in depth as well. So Sonia Roitman is an associate professor in development planning at the University of Queensland, so just next door, Australia. So her contributions to the field of the development planning and urban sociology include influential research on urban inequalities and how they manifest in cities. Her research interests including housing and poverty alleviation policies, the role of grassroots organization in urban planning, disaster planning, and informal practice. and gated communities, segregations, and planning instruments in global South cities. So her main research locations including Indonesia, Samoa, Uganda, Argentina, and of course, Australia. So without further ado, because our time is so limited, Sonia, please, I'll hand over the microphone to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Febi. Can you see my screen?
Yes,
Is that
I
right?
can see your
Okay.
screen.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you for the opportunity to share our project. I believe two of my colleagues from this research team are also online, so later it would be great if they want to add more, or maybe if I don't use my 10 minutes, they could add a bit more. My presentation is very short because I thought that it would be great to have the conversation later. So very much what we are discussing is the impacts of resilience, the impact of infrastructure that has been built in Semarang in relation to how these impacts are having different effects on different social groups, including women. So it's important to acknowledge that this is a project by 4 different organizations, and everyone is contributing in different ways. We see very clearly in our regular meetings how different we see particular issues. So it's a great discussion, a collective discussion. So we have 2 universities, the University of Queensland in Australia, the University of Diponegoro in Semarang, and then we have 2 local governments, which may the other projects, I don't know. So we have Kota Semarang, the local government in Semarang, and Brisbane City Council in Brisbane. And so this is very important, and this is something that it's important for us to acknowledge that this partnership started before the project. So like I believe all of these projects that have been presented here started at the same time in August 2023. Our project has been extended a bit, so we haven't finished yet. But we were able to start this project and to put the proposal because there had been a lot of conversations happening and events that had happened before this grant came over. And I think this is really important to stress here because sometimes we don't put a lot of effort into the pre-stages of the research projects, or we don't give a lot of value to that. And there is a lot of work that has been done before we actually started this project. So this is the project team. So you might know some of the people here, but we is here in the panelist session. Ida is also here in this session. So again, it's from these 4 organizations. We have different people, and sometimes we meet online, sometimes we have been able to meet in Semarang. So very much what we are trying to do is trying to understand what's the resilience of communities. So in this case, the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties. And in this case, it's from floods in Semarang. So Semarang is our case study in Central Java. But we also consider that this resilience is not an individual process only. It's not about only people who live in particular conditions, but it's also a collective process that we are trying to acknowledge and to see how it works. So in this case, for us, the resilience is very much linked to the responses to adapt to floods in urban areas. Of course, some of the areas are peri-urban areas, and this is also important to acknowledge that it's not the same when you have an area that is centrally located than when you have an area that is more at the periphery. So what are the connections to the city in general, but also the livelihood opportunities? And something that is very important in the project is this JETSI lens that all these projects funded by KONEKSI have. So basically, we want to see if there are different capacities and capabilities, probably based on these social differences, based on gender, based on abilities or disabilities, based on socioeconomic levels, and based on age. So very much what we are trying to see is what are these impacts from the infrastructure that has been built in Semarang. We know that in Semarang there are different projects that have been built in order to manage the impacts of floods, and this could be the normalization of a river, it could be a drainage, it could be a dike, it could be the improvement or upgrade of particular infrastructure. So what we are trying to do is to see from that infrastructure that is already there, that has existed for several years. We have taken a period of 20 years, so projects that had been built basically from 2000 onwards. And so from those projects, what have been the impacts for the local population? So the most basic one is to what extent they still keep flooded if they were flooded before, but also, so there are impacts at the housing level, at the neighborhood level, but there are also impacts to do with health. There are also impacts to do with livelihoods and the socioeconomic levels of these communities. There are impacts to do with community organization in general, and there are impacts to do with the natural resources as well. So we are trying to see how from there we can build a sort of assessment framework that could provide the government an opportunity to have a better sense of how to manage the impacts, because usually the government has a sense of the impacts in relation to the flood itself, the water. There is more water, there is less water, there are more problems in relation to that, but not so much in terms of what are the social, economic, ecological impacts for the local populations. So again, we also pay a big attention to gender, as some of the other projects here have already mentioned, and we really consider that women in particular have these three roles: reproductive, productive, and at the community level, and we wanted to see whether there were differences in terms of how they respond, or how they see floods happening, or how they see the impacts of the infrastructure. And we also use more generally JETSI, so we also look at impacts for disabled people, impacts to do with different socioeconomic level or different groups that might feel excluded for different reasons. So we had a big discussion about what sort of JETSI indicators we wanted to include, and we were able to get data from. And so this is a list of some of the indicators, not all. So the access to information in terms of how to respond to floods had been an important one. The participation in the decision-making about the infrastructure itself, whether women and men participated in making decisions on that, or it was more a top-down decision made by the government, to what extent the floods affect men and women differently, whether there have been changes in the activities before and after the infrastructure was built. Again, impacts for disabled population, impacts on socioeconomic levels, and impacts on age. And some of the things we have been discussing as part of the methodological challenges, I would say, is that sometimes it's very difficult to access, first of all, secondary data that is already there, that is segregated by gender or by socioeconomic level or by ability and disability. And also it's difficult sometimes to get that data even in focus groups or interviews, because there are some groups that are more difficult to reach, and there are more barriers that we need to overcome in order to have conversations with them. So here you can see like an overview of our research methods. So we have done a desktop review of policies. We have done lots of different site visits, and basically the main methods for data collection had been interviews. We have done interviews for outside Semarang, let's say, to what we call JETSI experts, people in Indonesia or maybe in Australia who had been working on JETSI and in particular gender, and what they thought they were important issues to consider in terms of this project, but also indicators generally. And then we have done interviews with community leaders, with government people. We have also done focus groups divided by women and men in our case studies. So we have 4 case studies, as you can see on your right. The main difference of these case studies is that we try to have case studies, first of all, that have not been discussed or analyzed much before. We didn't want to go to communities that have been over-researched, because we all know how complicated that is and how bad practice that is. But we also wanted to have a sort of diversity in terms of the infrastructure that we have been looking at. So in the first case, country, you see there, it's a dam that has been built by the government in order to manage the floods. Then you can see the second, Kaligawe, and the last one, Mangwanwetan, they are normalizations, like sort of managing the river flow, the water that comes in the river. And then the third one, Kemigen, is a sort of drainage polder that is regulating the flow of the water. So we are trying to see whether also the type of infrastructure has also a different impact in terms of communities. So the other thing that is really important, maybe I go back here, is that for our project, this point about the transfer of knowledge to policy is a critical aspect. And probably because we have 2 partners who are governments, local governments. So because of that, since the beginning, there has been a big discussion in terms of, okay, but in addition to the data collection and the research, what is it that the 2 local governments can learn, and what is it that they need? So a month ago, we did an online discussion that we called Online Discussion for Good Practice Exchange. And the main reason for this is that the 2 local governments wanted to discuss 2 things that are important. So Brisbane and Semarang are sister cities. They have been sister cities for 30 years or so. We could expect that on the one hand, they might be very different, but on the other hand, they have similarities. So the management of the growth, the urban growth, is one very important similarity, one phenomenon that is happening in the 2 cities, and the other one is that the 2 cities get flooded. So the discussion is, well, in the context of growth and that the cities will continue to grow, how do you manage the floods? So in this event that we did a month ago, what we did is we also invited people from outside the team, people who are practitioners in the 2 local governments who presented. And then there was a discussion about, like a very informal discussion about, is this a problem for you? Like, for example, for Semarang, waste management is coming as an important problem that is having an impact on flood management. So there were discussion about how do you have this problem and how do you manage that? And so the feedback was that it was a very good event for everyone involved, and that we would like to follow up somehow, even if it's an informal event as well.
Sonia, can
Yeah.
1 more minute?
This is my last. This is my last slide. So again, I don't want to present findings because we are still finalizing the data collection and the analysis. So it wouldn't be okay for me to present any findings, but I just wanted to give you 5 points. So in terms of productive activities, we have seen that the impacts on livelihoods have affected mostly men than women. Then women have had less access to information in relation to the building of the infrastructure or the impacts after that after they have been built. And there has been very limited participation in terms of the decision-making on building the infrastructure projects themselves. In terms of reproductive activities, as it was mentioned here, well, we know that it's basically affecting more women. So women in Indonesia are still the ones who take care of the home and the family members, and they are more affected than floods because they spend more time at home. And the last point is also to do with this understanding that basically, like in terms of strategic change or in terms of women having more decision-making, that has still, it's still a complicated process because there are less access to resources and participation for women. And I think that's it. Thank you very much. Looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sonia. Apologies again for the limited time, but thank you so much for the great presentations and also for your research as well in Indonesia. Okay, I would like to, from what I can see, as we all know, that it is important for us to make sure that the research findings is actually communicated clearly to the end users. And I can see that quite a number of people coming from Indonesian stakeholders attending this symposium. Terima kasih Bapak atau Ibu yang sudah hadir. So I think hopefully this can be very useful for us to make informed decision in our localities. Next, I would like to invite our last speaker, last but not least, Dr. Amy. How are you, Dr. Amy? So we have Dr. Amy Young, who is research fellow from Disrupting Violence Beacon, Griffith University. So because time is so limited, so I would like to hand over the microphone directly to Ibu Amy. Please, Ibu.
Hi, and thank you so much, Febi, and thank you so much to everyone for coming and for all the previous speakers. My presentation will really build on what you've all been discussing today already. So we'd just like to present our work, which was a collaboration funded by KONEKSI from Griffith University, led by our Disrupting Violence Beacon, Undip and Bryn. And I'd like to acknowledge the great work done by our Undip colleagues, led by Prof Febi, who is online today, and our Bryn colleagues, led by Buleli, who's online as well. And also acknowledge that we couldn't have done it without our two amazing local NGOs, Petiro and Akupi as well. So the focus of our presentation is very much on labour, migration and climate change, and keeping a focus on women and children. So we really aimed to apply a gender and a child-focused analysis to the policies and business responses to forced labour and climate change in coastal villages in Indonesia. And we really had a focus on Central Java and DKI Jakarta. We wanted to gain a better understanding of the experiences of vulnerable women and children in coastal villages and to work together with government, business leaders and community leaders to reach consensus on next steps and ways to address forced labour due to climate change in their communities. We've discovered as this project has gone on that translating forced labour between English and Bahasa is not always straightforward. So when we use the term forced labour in this project, we mean compelled labour, including labour practices which are socially mandated, but still negatively impact on women and children's well-being. We have case sites that somewhat overlap with some of our previous speakers. So we did our field work in North Jakarta, Pekalongan City, Pekalongan Regency, Demak and Semarang. And we used multiple methods to really capture the complexity and the intersectional nature of the issues. So led by the Bryn team, we did a policy scoping and follow-up interviews with government ministers. Led by the Undip team, we did survey measures in each of the field sites with women and children and follow-up interviews with women and children. And then in April, the Griffith team visited as well for 8 round tables in community with government and community leaders. And that really highlighted how intersecting the issues of climate change, labour, education, violence, or rights to safety and health are, as well as migration in the communities. So we aim to have equal numbers of participants in each field site. And that slide just gives you a bit of a snapshot of our participants. So some of our key findings was just that climate change is really impacting household finances, with over 80% of women who took part in the survey reporting that their household incomes have been impacted by climate change. And that includes things like raising of houses due to floodwaters, replacing rusted motorbikes because of floodwaters. 75% of women's current family homes had been damaged by a disaster, and this was pushing vulnerable families deeper into poverty. And 88% of children had seen flooding in their home, with 11.8% indicating that they see it every day. And this really disrupted their schooling and their access to services. So the impacts that we saw on women in particular were that women and children kind of face a double burden when it comes to climate change. So they are impacted by the changing climate and extreme weather events, but they also face increased rates of violence, including compelled labor, domestic and family violence, and we saw increases in rates of child marriage. All women use their income to provide for their family, and women's jobs were often under the minimum wage and lacking in adequate health standards. These included informal jobs or work in the home industries, which really aren't regulated to a high degree and have little safety or workplace rights and little protections. We saw women in the low income bracket tend to experience more adverse working conditions and were more often engaged in hazardous labor. And women who were compelled to work experienced conflict and traditional gender roles and often need to work through their breastfeeding period, impacting on both mother and child. So we also saw impacts on our children. So almost all children who took part in our survey worked, and the majority of children indicated that they worked every day. And there was a risk at risk of early marriage. We saw quite young children, so we didn't interview anyone under 10, but we saw 10-year-olds working for 21 to 30 hours during the week. And then we saw a disengagement from school while this happened and difficulty concentrating on school. And our youngest children were often the greatest victims of exploitation and forced labor. We also saw women feeling that they could be excluded from decision-making, and less than a third of women felt that they were represented in decision-making bodies, or 25% of women felt that their ideas to improve flood handling had not been heard. When we held our roundtable discussions in community, community told us there was often an absence of focus on women and children in these discussions, and it was the first time that they'd had that opportunity with us. Like has been highlighted in the other presentations, we saw an intersection with health impacts, and especially increases in illness, diarrhea, flu, headaches, and itchy skin. And this was attributed to climate change. We saw great changes in livelihoods, with communities calling for greater training and capacity building to address this. And we did see school disengagement due to climate change as well, and from poverty-related stigma. And this then encouraged children to work more to support their families. We also saw a vulnerability amongst women who had migrated. So fewer women who had migrated felt that they were represented in decision bodies, and women who migrated were less likely to believe that they had the same education and training opportunities as men. Migration impacted feelings in the community of social cohesion, and communities that had been relocated or forcibly relocated multiple times had a relocation fatigue. And we especially saw that in Denmark. So very quickly, our recommendations from our research that related to women and children, we would like to see slow onset disasters classified as disasters and responded to in a gender responsive way. We need greater community consultation with women and children in social planning to improve the effectiveness of economic women's empowerment, to have a look at pathways related to well-being, safety, and economic empowerment, and to match these with formal and community interventions. Do some community level research into alternate livelihoods, and include women in decision-making bodies at a local level. And we'd really call for empowerment and community capacity building to address adaptation. So our two kind of takeaway messages, and our contact details are also up on the screen, would be that slow onset disasters have gendered social impacts, which disrupt work, health, migration, and education, and that empowerment and community capacity building really need to be included in strategies to address adaptation. And thank you so much for letting me present that so super quickly.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Annie. All right, so I think we've got all presenter. So please join me to give virtual hand claps to all presenter. And thank you so much, Amy, Sonia, Clara, and also Prof. Zulfa. I think Prof. Zulfa has left because he got another commitment at 4:30. So, but we also have Dr. Connie. I think Dr. Connie is still here. Yes. Hi, Connie. Thank you so much, Connie, for standing by and also for staying until the end of this symposium. So, all right, so this is where we are going to have a little bit of discussions between us, or we can also invite audience as well to ask, to comments as well, to add some points as well if they would like to add some comments as well. I can see that, thank you so much for presenter who already answered some questions through our question and answer chat box. So thank you so much. And okay, so anybody would like to add any comments or maybe ask any questions? As we all know that all this research are so much impactful and very, very, it is a quality research. Multiple methods has been applied. And we all speak the same languages as well. It's all about KONEKSI. It's a disproportionate impact to the for the vulnerable populations. So let me just speak in bahasa Indonesia a little bit. So Bapak Ibu semuanya yang mau bertanya, silahkan bisa menggunakan bahasa Indonesia. So for those who want to ask in Indonesian language, please feel free to do so as well.
Mas Febi, ada beberapa pertanyaan di
Oh, yes.
Q&A yang saya mau jawab
Oh yes, okay.
secara live, kalau boleh.
Please, Bu Clara. And there is actually also one question. I think ada satu pertanyaan yang mungkin nggak dimasukkan ke question and answer. Ini pertanyaannya tentang bagaimana mengedukasi perubahan iklim yang tidak menggurui tapi melatih berpikir kritis.
Ya, sudah ada di Q&A
ada,
juga.
Oke. Yeah, please.
Baik, terima kasih Bu atau Bapak Via yang guru SMA. Ini salah satu pertanyaan yang juga sedang kami pikirkan karena sebagai tindak lanjut dari penelitian ini. Salah satu caranya kami merefleksikan ya dari apa yang kami kerjakan selama penelitian ini. Yang paling penting adalah membumikan perubahan iklim itu di kehidupan sehari-hari. Dan dengan cara-cara kreatif kemudian menantang anak-anak dan kaum muda untuk berpikir tentang perubahan iklim di kehidupan sehari-hari. Jadi mungkin kita bisa kasih tahu fenomena alamnya seperti apa, tapi kemudian mendorong mereka untuk mencari tahu wujudnya apa ya di kehidupan mereka, di pemukiman mereka, di kampung mereka. Salah satu caranya misalnya menonton film pendek, kemudian bertanya apakah hal tersebut terjadi di tempat kalian atau tidak, mengapa. Jadi salah satu beberapa cara yang kami lakukan misalnya mengajak mereka berkeliling dan kemudian bertanya 5 tahun terakhir ada nggak yang berubah di sekitar rumahmu? Perubahannya seperti apa? Kira-kira kenapa terjadi? Terus bagaimana kalian menyikapi perubahannya? Seperti itu. Jadi mereka diajak berpikir dengan memberikan mereka pertanyaan-pertanyaan pemantik. Nah, tentunya mereka akan bertanya kembali, jadi kita butuh juga persiapan untuk menjawab pertanyaannya. Jadi perubahan iklim itu memang ada latar belakang saintifiknya, tapi kita harus membumikannya dengan hal-hal yang lebih dekat. Nah, cara-cara seperti berjalan-jalan di pemukiman atau menyuruh mereka bertanya ke orang tua mereka dan membandingkan apa yang orang tua mereka alami selama masa kecil dan apa yang mereka alami sekarang, itu juga merupakan teknik-teknik yang bisa dilakukan. Saya senang sekali kalau Ibu atau Bapak Via mau berdiskusi lebih lanjut dengan tim di PUSKAPA, karena kami juga pengen tahu sebenarnya seperti apa situasi belajar mengajar di SMA dan tantangannya seperti apa. Nanti saya masukin email saya di situ, bisa saya nantikan korespondensinya gitu. Untuk satu Android Bluebird ya, saya sebetulnya disclaimer tidak begitu tahu desa adat itu seperti apa, tantangannya seperti apa. Yang saya asumsikan desa adat juga berbeda-beda tergantung bagaimana adat itu diinterpretasikan dan sistemnya diwujudkan. Mungkin yang perlu dilakukan adalah sebenarnya mengumpulkan anak muda itu sendiri dulu. Jadi memberikan mereka wadah aman yang terpisah di awal dari orang yang lebih tua, sehingga mereka mungkin baru bisa punya identitas soal atau common understanding di antara mereka, anak-anak muda, kaum muda ini tentang posisi mereka, permasalahan mereka, dan mungkin mereka sendiri yang bisa tahu bagaimana caranya kemudian mereka bisa mulai menyusup ke dalam pengambilan keputusan. Tanpa mengetahui bagaimana duduk persoalannya di masing-masing desa adat, saya kurang bisa memberikan rekomendasi yang lebih konkret. Tapi salah satu yang saya secara general saya rasa bisa dilakukan adalah mewujudkan safe space bagi anak dan kaum muda, tentu saja dengan mempertimbangkan gender ya, karena mungkin kaum muda perempuan juga butuh safe space-nya sendiri, terpisah dari laki-laki, sehingga mereka bisa punya nih identitas dan pemahaman yang sama ataupun berbeda tentang posisi mereka di masyarakat dan apa sih isu perubahan iklim yang mau mereka prioritaskan, begitu.
Terima kasih Mbak Clara, thank you so much. I can actually also see the Bu Wiwi, yeah, Prof Wiwi, you also raise your hand. Shall I to... And for audience, if you want to say something, if you want to open your mic, so you can also put in the chat box and we can allow you to open your microphone as well. So Prof Wiwi, would you like to...
Ya, terima kasih Pak Febi, izin saya sampaikan dalam bahasa Indonesia juga ya. Saya pertama terima kasih banyak untuk seluruh presentasi yang telah disampaikan. Saya kira sangat menarik dan penting bagi kita untuk memahami bahwa ketika bicara perubahan iklim saat ini kita tidak hanya fokus kepada hal-hal yang bersifat fisik saja gitu. Bagaimana kita sudah mulai punya concern terhadap isu gender, JETSI dan sebagainya yang dibuktikan dengan banyak paparan hari ini. Mudah-mudahan lebih membuka satu intervensi yang lebih menyeluruh ketika kita memahami dampak perubahan iklim. Yang kedua, yang juga ingin saya sampaikan pada kesempatan ini adalah bahwa dalam research ini yang saya tadi simak, keseluruhan paparannya itu melibatkan banyak pihak dalam prosesnya, baik dalam pengumpulan data analisis, dalam arti bahwa ini menjadi peran kita bersama. Apalagi saya di sini terlibat di 2 tim dengan teman-teman dari Griffith dan dari Queensland dengan Ibu Emi dan Ibu Sonia, dan di mana di kedua, dan saya yakin yang tim yang lain juga saya rasakan betul bahwa keterlibatan banyak pihak dalam prosesnya sangat penting. Dan dengan tim Queensland ini menjadi satu pengalaman yang menarik dalam arti kita melibatkan 2 pemerintah daerah. Jadi ada exchange antara pemerintah dari Brisbane dan Kota Semarang, di mana akhirnya kita juga bisa saling belajar. Poinnya adalah melalui kesempatan ini, mudah-mudahan ke depan ketika kita bicara perubahan iklim, kita bisa lihat dari lens yang lebih lebar begitu ya, termasuk menginkludkan persoalan atau isu gender. Dan yang kedua, bagaimana kita lebih melibatkan banyak pihak begitu dalam prosesnya maupun nanti dalam implementasi. Tentunya kita berharap riset ini bukan akhir kan, tapi ada kelanjutannya yang bisa kita realisasikan secara konkret dengan masyarakat, terutama masyarakat terdampak perubahan iklim itu sendiri. Saya kira itu poin tambahan dari saya, mungkin bukan pertanyaan tapi lebih menekankan beberapa hal yang saya kira penting dari pertemuan kita hari ini secara webinar. Terima kasih Pak Febi, saya kembalikan kepada Pak Febi.
Terima kasih Prof. Febi. Next, I can see Prof. Sonia also raise her hand. Sonia would like to say something, would like to ask any question.
So I had a question for Wiwi, but I think that from what I could understand half of the Indonesian, I think she already responded. I was interested in hear her perspective in terms of like she's been involved in 2 of the projects, and so like in terms of, I think that like some of the similarities are very obvious in like within the projects, but also differences or challenges or any perhaps any sort of learning from your side, since you have seen different views, right? Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Sonia. And I can see also Dr. Connie put something on the chat box as well, and that is about the inspiring youth-led initiative, which is actually very important. Okay, anybody would like to add any comments or any? I can see that you know we discuss a lot in relation to gender-based decision-making process, the importance of involving marginalized community, and also, of course, understanding how we can understand the issue from their perspective. Because sometimes, like we, as a stakeholder, we can, you know, we thought we understand the problems, but by involving them in decision-making process, I think we can have a very you know, in-depth, you know, understanding in relation to what is actually the problem felt by the community. Have we got all the questions answered? So anybody would like to ask anything? I think
there are also questions from Q&A to Sonia.
Sonia. Oh, where is it? Let me check, because I just. Okay, which one is it? Oh yeah, so there's actually, Sonia, there's actually a question for you for you. This is from, I think, Mbak Fia from UPI Bandung. If you can answer that, Sonia, you can open your microphone to answer. You don't have to write if you like. You can answer.
Yes,
and there's also a question from Inaya as well. Yeah.
Yeah, too. Yeah. So so the first one is so at the bottom is the question about like having more conversations. Yes, I'm very happy to have more conversations. Like even this morning, and I think that you know, we all come from different disciplines, but this morning in another meeting we were discussing in terms of for us who are in the urban planning discussion, how it is so much linked to so many different other disciplines, and in particular environmental management. And so how it is so difficult at the moment to say, oh no, you do only this or you do only that. So at the end of the day, it's all embedded and it's all linked. And I think that in that sense, you know, like anyone who is doing environmental education for high school students, I think that it's very relevant. We were also discussing that at least in Australia, there has been, in the whole country, there has been a decline in terms of the number of students doing planning. And the reason for that is mainly not because planning is not a required discipline in terms of the practice, because all the students are already working in planning. The issue is that at the high school level, geography has become optional for many students. So because of that, there are not really pathways for people to understand that, oh, there is a connection with environmental management, there is a connection with urban planning, there is a connection. And so in the end, there are many people who might be very interested in this case based on this question in terms of high school students who don't really know where to go to find answers to their concerns, which I think that for most young people, environmental issues, climate change issues are a very big concern at the moment. And so the second question is about the sister-city relationship. And I think that, you know, we always have this discussion in our meetings in terms of, first of all, trying to go away from this biased understanding of, you know, I don't know, Indonesia has all these problems and Australia is wonderful, because that's not the case. And so, and there are lots of learning practices that we have learned from both sides. So from this discussion last month, Brisbane City Council was very impressed about the community organization that exists in Indonesia, of course, and how much the local government can really, I wouldn't say rely on the communities, but have discussions, have dialogues, have regular conversations with communities, which is something that doesn't really happen in Australia and most cities. So they are seen as two different organizations that don't really meet very frequently unless there are problems. Whereas in Indonesia, it's a regular conversation for every day. So I think that for Brisbane City Council was a very good takeaway. Of course, the management of the waste is a bit different in terms of Indonesia and Australia. My sense is that in Indonesia at the moment, there is a big crisis with waste and waste management, and it seems as, you know, everyone is over capacity. Here in Jakarta is the main issue that the government is trying to deal with. Whereas in Australia, you don't see the problem in the same scale. And of course, that has implications with floods in particular, because in Indonesia, at least everywhere you go to even very rural villages, they are full of waste, and particular plastic. So of course, that is the problem. So again, it's trying to see what are the differences, but also how we can learn from each other without assuming that one is good and one is bad, and, you know, but it's more like everyone is learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Maybe if there's no more questions, so what I would like to do, if I would like to because we are actually at the very final stage of our program today, so I'd like to invite all speakers to be on the screen, if that's possible, and then provide 1 minute just closing statement, if that's okay. And then, do you have any? Oh, we actually have just one question. So we have Esther Campbell raise hand. Esther, would you like to? Can you do it quick, like maybe 1 minute? So I would like to ask questions or would like to add any comments. Esther Campbell.
Iya,
Yes.
oke, bentar. Oke, saya ingin bertanya kepada Ibu Sonia. Saya pakai bahasa Indonesia saja ya, Pak. kebetulan saya juga penelitian tentang resiliensi, tetapi saya melihat pada pemanfaatan lutur sebagai model resiliensi rumah tangga petani di Kabupaten Maluku Barat Daya. Nah, yang saya ingin tanyakan, bagaimana kebijakan pemerintah dalam model resiliensi yang di Semarang? Karena kalau yang di kami, yang saya sementara penelitian tentang model resiliensi pemanfaatan lutur untuk rumah tangga petani itu, karena mereka di Kabupaten Maluku bagian Barat itu, Maluku Barat Daya itu, mereka itu di bagian terdepan dan terluarnya Indonesia. Jadi perubahan iklim sehingga mereka membuat satu lutur atau satu tembok, satu pagar yang melindungi mereka dari hama, binatang atau hewan buas dalam tanaman mereka. Nah, seperti itu. Nah, kalau yang tadi dikatakan oleh Ibu Sonia tentang resiliensi yang di Semarang, bagaimana kebijakan pemerintah untuk daerah Jawa Tengah seperti itu. Nah, sementara ini kami penelitian ini untuk bagaimana pemerintah untuk memberi kebijakan kepada daerah terluar dan terdepan bagian Indonesia paling terluar yang berhadapan dengan Australia dan Timor Leste. Terima kasih, Pak.
Thank you, Ibu Esther. I'm not sure whether Sonia, did you get that? That was.
I got half of it, but I think that also because it refers to Semarang, it's better if Buwiwi responds, not me. but I think that also, I don't know if the question was exactly this, but I think that one issue to do with resilience and the responsibility of the government, if that was the question, is also that I think that there is a very fine line in terms of understanding what is the role of the government and what is the role of the communities. Because yes, the communities can become resilient, but I don't think that means that the government doesn't have a role to play in supporting communities, if that makes sense. And if that was the question, I'm not sure, but maybe we wants to answer. Sorry about it.
It's okay, Sonia. I think Prof, we would like to add any comments to
in Indonesian.
In bahasa.
I would like to add briefly. First, if I may, to Bu Sonia's question. Jadi for Bu Sonia, I think it's interesting to understand that there's some similarity on this 5 project because of course all concern on gender, but the interesting things is how all projects try to do something to improve the literacy and awareness of these vulnerable people, the gender side. And interesting to understand how we do it differently in different perspective using different disciplines. So this is indeed multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary. And I hope then we can learn each other from this process. And for the second, for Bu Esther, I think what I would like to add briefly is governance is indeed important issues to be discussed when we talk about how to mainstream gender into our policy document and policy action. And maybe you need to be aware that we have national, provincial, and local government. It is an interesting and to be understood that when we talk about climate change adaptations experience in the coastal area mostly under the responsibility of provincial government. Meanwhile, when we talk into more detail, there are also a contribution or some function or authority under the local government. So we need still have a homework on the policy aspect and how we can contribute to the integrate, how each government can play their optimum role to optimize the gender aspect in our development policy. So I think I'll stop this. I know the time is so limited. Thank you.
Yeah, the time is actually up. Not sure if I would like to say, anybody would like to maybe just the speaker, this key speaker would like to do maybe half-minute closing statement. Will that be possible even? half minute or 1 minute closing statement. Anybody would like to do? This is open invitation. If people would like to do a closing statement, as we are actually approaching to the end of our program today.
For me, it's just to say thank you. I think that it's been a great discussion, and it's really useful to know what the other projects are about and how there might be lots of similarities as well as differences. So thank you very much for everyone who was involved, for organizing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you. I echo what Sonia just said, and I think the key thing for me is observing how intersectional all these things are, and the flow on across disciplines and across a range of approaches. So there's a really rich sort of intersection of different discipline perspectives coming together and looking at different subsections of problems. So I think that's one of the key things I'd take out of today.
Thanks, Patrick. I want to put a spotlight, maybe Emmy or Connie or Clara would like to do a closing statement, just a quick one.
Oh, well, I think one of the key messages that I learned from here is that political literacy is important, because otherwise climate change would be very technocratic and we would not be able to engage with the most marginalized, the most powerless among us, and to empower them in reaching solutions.
That is quite key message, Clara. Yes, practical solution is important, but political solution is also very important as well. If there is nobody who would like to do a closing statement, I think anybody, I just want to give one more chance, I think. Okay,
yeah.
Emmy.
Go, sorry.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo Prof. Weewee's call for transdisciplinary. And I think one of the real strengths of all the projects that were presented was just how many stakeholders we had involved in the rooms, and how many community members we really saw get involved. And that shows that the community really want to be involved in solutions as well. I'll hand over to Connie. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I just also want to join the appreciations and inspire. It's very inspiring to see all the efforts going into this very, very challenging area. I really love the Indonesian saying of like, kalau bukan sekarang, kapan lagi? So it's
that's really nice.
urgency of this issue that we need to be involved and do work. So I really congratulate and appreciate all the hard work and amazing work everybody's doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Emmy. And thank you, everybody. And I think this is actually the end of the symposium. So I just would like to wrap up the discussion. So hopefully the discussion that we've had remind us of the power of shared knowledge and collaborations. So you can see that we are coming from different fields. We have engineering, we have social work, we have public health, we have urban planning. What else? We have political science, probably. And also, it's actually because we are dealing with poly-crisis, we're dealing with climate crisis, which is wicked, problems. So it is therefore important for us to work in collaboration from multiple professional background, and also from government institutions, academia, NGO, community organizations. So this is actually showing us, we work together to solve the problem together as well. So I hope the ideas exchange through this symposium, further learning, inspire further learning, innovations, and action, and hopefully more collaborative research in the future. I would like to give special thank you to our speakers. Thank you so much to all of you. And of course, to the organizers. So we have two key people who are working behind the screen. We have Mas Yudi from Griffith University, and also Mbak Citra from Universitas Diponegoro. Thank you so much to both of you. I think without your efforts, we won't be able to have this symposium today. And of course, thank you all the participants for your engagement and thoughtful questions as well. So, and also very important as well, thank you to the translator as well. As we wrap up, so let's remember that today is not the end, okay? But this is actually a starting point for further conversations and hopefully further collaborations in the future. So as we got sponsor for KONEKSI, so please connect it, because KONEKSI itself is also connected in Bahasa Indonesia. Stay connected, and we look forward to seeing you at future events. So please take care and goodbye for now. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Thank you.
wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.